Okay, let's do this. Welcome back to Kill the Computer. As always, I am joined by my co-host June. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. The Midwestern wildfires are settling down a little bit. It's been a horrible experience.
Be careful how you refer to those fires. I don't know if you saw the discourse on Blue Sky about how to properly refer to the fires without blaming the people from the country of origin. Did you see that? I did
see that.
Yeah,
and like I do agree that like I am not blaming Canadian individuals. That's not anyone's fault. It's the fault of capitalism. It's the fault of climate change. It's the fault of like I think Donald Trump is a lot of the one of the people that's like it's Canada's fault. It's like it's not it's not.
Dude, we should all be blaming the trees. For far too long, trees have had it too good.
Fuck the trees. No, what I will say is there are certain trees with built-in mechanics to survive wildfires, and the ones that don't, they are the ones causing this. So it's the tree's fault. It's not red pine's fault. Red pine's really great at resisting wildfires traditionally, but regardless, I'm doing great. I'm super excited to talk about today a different kind of wildfire, the gaming industry wildfire. So this is gonna be fantastic. Yeah,
and for that we have brought industry vet, friend of the show, and fellow bird respecter, Michael Maurino. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Just pushing some pixels and polygons today, like the woke game dev I am.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us, Michael, a little bit about your history with the industry?
Sure. I have been doing this probably for far too long, about 20 years now, maybe 18, 20 years. I started out, I'm originally from Western New York, and somehow I ended up in LA doing this full time. I started out in visual effects for movies and TV, like B-level movies and TV, and somehow found myself with a good enough portfolio to get into Riot Games around 2010 or so. And from there, the industry sort of works in this way where the friends you make are the friends you'll work with forever and ever and ever. Mm-hmm. And that somehow just like kept me rolling enough to have consistent employment. Imagine that, for so many years. And I'm extremely grateful for it. I currently work as a concept artist, and I also work as an art director in the industry. Mostly my focus is on more stylized work. So I started on League of Legends as my first big title. So stylized, more simplistic, painterly crafted sort of stuff, versus like realistic Call of Duty kind of things. I love working with amazing teams. I'm so really, really lucky to have so many amazing people I work with on a daily basis, and just the games industry in general, despite the wildfire nature that it is incredibly important socially for me, and very supportive.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's a good place to start.
Sure.
The layoffs. That's kind of been on everybody's mind. So I know there obviously, gaming has become so ubiquitous that like most people know enough about it to understand there are lots of layoffs happening. But just in case you didn't really know the scope of it, it's something like I saw the GDC study that's like in the last like 4 years, or maybe that was since 2020. Or 2022 here. I've got it in my notes. It's like 45,000 layoffs.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, I think that there's some of this is to be expected because we had this like huge hiring boom during like the pandemic and everybody was staying home. And, I think a lot of companies bet big on, the growth in that. And I think some of that's been true. But even that that kind of course correction doesn't really seem to explain what's going on in the industry now. What's your take on it, Michael?
Especially really quick. Sorry, that like historically it seemed like from my perspective as someone I don't play too many video games these days, but I used to a lot. I was a huge gamer back in the day, but there seemed to be a lot more stability than there is now. But go on. Sorry.
Oh, sure. No problem. Of course, there's sort of this challenges existing in industry for a very long time. Like by its nature, it has tended to be less stable than some other industries before it, which is not saying a lot. But that being said, it can be precarious. People can jump from project to project. Funding can come, funding can go. Projects can succeed or fail, depending. But I think what it sort of boils down to is like the same trappings of virtually every industry out there, which is concentration of capital. The concentration of that means that you have less funding to go around. You also tend to have executives, publishers who are, I think, are sort of the mindset that they might be the creative visionaries behind things, and usually it's not the case. It's usually the folks on the ground, mid-level, doing the work, doing the coding, doing the art. And
so there's the myth of a man like Mr. Kern, for example, who can just kind of will things into existence.
Yeah. I mean, and sometimes you do have visionaries like Mark Kern, but sometimes
great example of one. Yeah,
but often some of the original gaming executives or creative directors or centers of the companies were pioneers. They were artists. They were coders. They created engines. They did all sorts of insane things that were very much related to the day-to-day job. And with any scaling up of any industry, of course, you become less and less connected to that. And I think as long as you have, or as long as you have had companies that grow, products that become huge and almost like able to easily be mismanaged, those executives or those like higher level creative development folks may have come from a sort of in the trenches relationship with their employees and then sort of drift away from that. And so there becomes kind of like a fog in between that, where maybe they do have really great intentions. Like I know the founders of Blizzard really did, as they were exiting, they did have really good intentions and they did care about their products and about their employees. But in other cases, I think that drift can be pretty intense and create a fair amount of dissonance. And I think from the flip side of that, you also have a lot of, just the ecosystem of money. Games, despite the instability, are billions and billions of dollars and have eclipsed movies and TV as primary, entertainment ecosystems. And that's going to create a few things: capital concentration. It's going to create consolidation between publishers and developers. Large companies are going to eat up the smaller ones, and you'll have this gap between indie developers who usually do create something novel and interesting versus, extremely big multinationals, which, the dichotomy could not even be more intense than that. So I think there ends up being, to go back to it, is like drift of like capital to workers, management to workers, companies that are essentially like too big to manage effectively and their projects. Scope tends to be an issue, and I think high level leadership and executives tend to try to overscope, and that doesn't necessarily translate to good production.
I mean, the thing I think about, especially as my very first video game console was the humble Game Boy, one of the very first Game Boys, and then Super Nintendo. I started, way back when, and as I became a teen and young adult, the thing I noticed was that microtransactions, particularly, of course, I mean, the iconic example of Oblivion horse armor is like the classic, but especially like with loot boxes and the gacha mechanic in gaming seemed to sort of start to dig away at this sort of extractionist mindset within the video game culture, to where it seems to have really destroyed gaming in a sense, or like it sort of betray the trust of gamers, that it's like the game you buy, the game you download is not the game. The game is sort of paying more money on the side to get the exact experience that you want. And it feels like, maybe I'm just talking for myself specifically, but I don't think I'm the only one, where it feels like in that moment, and you worked for Riot, and I think League of Legends in particular, the skins were optional, where some games, a lot of the pay to win mechanics are not optional. Absolutely. But it really feels like that was sort of the biggest example of industry deterioration, was that sort of pay to win microtransaction mechanic that took over almost every single game. Even like Halo, a game I really loved, it really leaned in hard into that sort of pay to win loot box mechanic.
It was a huge inflection point, I would say. And coming from my first experience with anything like microtransactions was working at Riot. And so I worked on all of the character content teams, so champions, skins, and champion update. And to say that cosmetics and microtransactions could have a pure intent behind them, I think that's the closest you will ever get, where teams were like, we know this is optional. This is to enhance the fantasy and the psychological attachment you have to the content. Because in terms of hero shooter or an MMO or whatever it might be, you're looking to embody the player's fantasy, the depth, the breadth, and create a character they can identify with, which is why it's super important to have a vast cast of characters and types that you can sort of glom onto. And so I think it sort of started with a quote noble cause, a way to make money that was entirely optional. But I think as soon as the loot box sort of was dropped and executives saw that as the thing to jump on.
Sorry, can I jump in? For those who don't know, what's a loot box?
It is essentially like a self-contained RNG system to where you click on it and there's going to be something secret, maybe something kind of gambled. It's not like the greatest. It's, kind of gray area in between like, an intended product you may purchase versus like a roll of the dice. And that's like super iffy depending on how you look at it.
So like a mystery item of varying rarity or whatever that you buy.
But not even like one that you might drop from like an old school like bubble machine or whatever. Like you kind of know you're getting, or a McDonald's Happy Meal toy, like you're getting 1 of 7 or something.
Yeah,
it really is encased in something you don't have transparency into, and so it can be looked at as predatory.
It's I would say it's like gambling adjacent. It's not necessarily gambling, but it sort of has the same exact mechanic system behind it. The same sort of FOMO mechanic in a lot of like gacha type games these days.
And I think another, just a tack on that, I think it also is an inflection point because companies began to see it as a way to supplant box title sales straight up. Right. Single purchase versus constant, live services was
my next thing. Michael was saying, would it be fair to say that this kind of paved the way for everything becoming a sort of live service game now?
Yep. Live service is something we joke about a lot in the industry because like the dreaded 2 words, right? Like, my God, I have to work on a live services product, which again, kind of all has these almost like noble things, right? Like when you think of like World of Warcraft.
So what is a live service game? I'm going to ask a bunch of dumb questions.
No, it's fine. Sometimes, I might have dumb answers because like I'm a humble artist and may not have like all the biz speak in mind. But live service is like a perpetual environment that goes on that developers can keep adding to, the players can keep buying into, maybe literally buying into.
So Fortnite.
League of Legends, Overwatch, World of Warcraft, all of those. In various spectrums are live services game. There's a perpetual effort by the company
to always
continue
new
players
stuff.
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. And I think like, again, the core of live services is something you would probably want in something like an MMO, right? And again, I will sort of like assume the best of all of these folks. Like I was a big Blizzard fanboy back in the day. And so the idea of, and I didn't play WoW for that long. I was like, either I can stay in school or I can play WoW. And I chose the former. So, but I know some of those devs personally, and the amount of like love and amazing community they create inside of it. Like those ecosystems are rich and beautiful. And I think that so the core nugget of this always seems to be there when it comes to developers having a close relationship to the game they're working on, and then is usually like transmuted into this like monkey paw situation where like it turns into the most predatory system you can possibly imagine, and it always goes to its fullest extent until you're dealing with like gotcha, which is like the logical conclusion where everything is paid to even participate inside of it. So
like you could in some cases you don't need to pay to participate. Sure. But goddamn, is it a horrible, slow experience?
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So, it's I'm not a fan of loot boxes. I do like to click on things now and again. And when I was playing Overwatch a little bit more, I would enjoy those. But I think live services, we sort of grown a little bit this day and age because not every game is meant to be a live service. It's when Diablo switched over to a live service model back in the day, there was a big up in arms talk about that in the industry, both and in players, right? It was insane. You had to log onto the internet to play essentially like a single player game. Wild. And now that's basically like wait for one of your 7 clients to connect to the central server in order to play, solitaire or something like that. It's always online, live services, that sort of things. So double-edged sword.
People forget that like 10 years ago, I may be long, I don't know, I'm old, but if it was like announced that like a major, I guess we'd call it AAA today, I don't know when we started using that term, if a major game was going to require always online, Redditors would like fucking riot, like flip cars, like, you know what I mean?
What was it like maybe 15 years ago that the big was it SimCity 4 or SimCity?
Yep. Oh my god,
SimCity
core memory.
Yeah,
that's the exact thing I was thinking of, Junior.
That's my trauma you just reignited.
It was the rebrand. It was the relaunch of SimCity. I don't think it was SimCity 4, but it was like the SimCity new version of it back in the 2010s. That was like a big example of the gaming industry going too far with the DRM. That was like a nightmare for, I feel like, game devs online. It was like everyone was up in arms. That was like the discourse.
Yeah, gamers were ready to do like a Philly sports style riot over that.
I cannot believe I forgot it, because I was a huge SimCity person.
I will never forget about
SimCity. My god, never forget.
12 or whatever it was. Yeah.
That's wild. Because I remember being on my PC and trying to log in and hitting server backup. And I also remember I was incensed by the fact you couldn't build out to extents of the map. There were regions, because I was a modder too. Like, I enjoyed modding my SimCity. Oh my god. Okay, I don't know. I have to go to my therapist about this. This has brought so much. This has brought so much internal strife and friction up.
It killed SimCity, dude. Now we have City Skylines, which PU. I love that game, but I hate. I hate that game, but I have probably close to 1,000 hours if you combine 1 and 2. You know what I mean?
Same, no lie.
It's so fucking annoying. I hate that game, but I can't stop playing it.
I think the through line with everything we've mentioned so far, though, is that there was just like a long line of steps that the gaming industry, not necessarily because of the people making games, but the figureheads in the gaming industry, the CEOs, the people that run these companies, started making a lot of different decisions that were meant to extract as much profit at every level as possible. That sort of led to kill it. But I think this moment of like, I described this before we decided to do this specific episode. I think we were talking a little bit about the gaming industry with like some of the layoffs that were happening recently this year. There was, I think, about 10,000 layoffs just in 2026 so far in the entire gaming industry. And the one example that I was thinking of is that it feels like GTA 6 is the last pillar holding up the entire gaming industry. And if it flops, at least from my perspective, a lot of this is going to start
June's like
down.
Michael Burry in The Big Short watching GTA 6.
I'm shorting GTA 6.
Playing air drums, like with headphones on while watching the trailer.
That's a little known mechanic in GTA 6. You get to short, you get your own private stock market, and you can like invest in GTA coin or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get killed. I'm gonna get absolutely no idea.
But like I think maybe I'm being a little dramatic. But it feels like that's the state the gaming industry is in right now. It feels like the age of the AAA game is sort of coming to a close, at least from my perspective.
I think there's some credence to that. Something that we note, especially on the art side, is the scope towards hyper-realism and the scope towards increased development time, costs, asset production because of the chase of the real. Now, Rockstar probably is one of the quote unquote like best examples of a company. I know that every company has its horrors and benefits, but they sort of pioneered that direction where everything feels super tangible, worlds feel very rich. You know, the experience is like one-to-one, you very much buy into those characters, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think, interestingly enough, that's sort of something other companies glommed onto. There were a few, indeed, pillars of the industry that sought specific solutions, right? GTA was like visceral and real and huge open world. And so that, created a level of hangers-on and followers. Fortnite,
and interestingly, it became a live service game also,
yes,
GTA 5.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Fortnite, probably another consideration here, right? It created the Battle Royale, and then like metamorphosized into this verse sort of thing. And of these things, I think, are end up, like you said, like these these big structural things that hold up the industry, and when one of them fails, you're like, oh my god, that could happen. Like, I'm really shocked that the Bungie layoffs, very much so. Like, some of those folks are my friends, incredibly talented. I don't know what Bungie's internals look like. I don't know what the parent company was thinking or did or whatever, but that kind of rocked, I think, a lot of people to their core, that like such a seminal and really beloved game could face that sort of like structural decomposition or collapse. At least that's sort of in my social circle. We're all kind of like gasp, like that could happen. So like maybe that was herald of what you're talking about, is like first Destiny fell, and then the rest of the pillars of reality started to crumble soon after.
Well, to be fair,
Definitely.
They did put a pink cloud in Halo, and they made Halo gay, and now we're all paying the price.
That's
for
why
it.
I play Halo, though. I play Halo because it's come on. I had a Halo clan called the Pink Pirate Cowboys.
Okay,
back in college. It was delightful.
I do love that, and I know it's done cynically. You shouldn't really engage with the stuff that I believe it was Smash JT, friend of the show, that started that whole like bisexual Halo meme or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, like we learned from this guy's fucking court released chat GPT logs that he's literally just looking to agitate. And it's kind of crazy that like one bored guy was able to really kind of create that big of a narrative, like just using an LLM, because there are people, like a lot of those guys believe that the bisexual Halo thing is like real and a problem. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes me lose my mind. We also have like dipping toes into like culture war stuff or gamergatey stuff. It didn't phase me as much, because I was like, I was born and raised in the League of Legends forum, and that was like an entire. Remember when they used to call us the wokies, the SJWs? Do you remember those days?
God,
I do.
Yeah. So that was like my first accusation when I came onto like the Riot forums, because I created a female tank for the game with help of some other amazing developers, and that was like seen as woke, despite me making really bad decisions like putting her in high heels. I'm sorry, I atoned for that. But I think I do indeed think that one of the reasons there's sort of that excessive rabble that can be created from the reactionary side of things is often because the games industry is very opaque. It's very mystified. People don't know how it works. They're like, oh, you could just fire all of these. Who needs narrative? Like, who needs QA? It's like, these are the core components that make any game. Like, we have a saying, sort of, I guess it's DNA: design, narrative, and art create the fundamental like triumvirate of any video game development. Even if you're dealing with something that is live services, that's maybe a little bit more like surface level.
I'm sorry, Michael. I've been led to believe that there is some sort of woke pronouns community manager that tells you how to design and make the games.
It's me. I'm that. At one point, like I had a partner for a while, and she was a community or a community manager, and her job was like really difficult. Like, it was about fending off. Like, she was like this first bulwark of protection for the developers, and I gained such an incredible respect for that discipline. But that's another thing, like that's so far from the truth, right?
Yeah.
It's like the person who is essentially an extension of public relations or marketing, or doing like the most pure component of game development, which is community building, which really is part of development, because there should be a mutual, a two-way street that goes there. It's always best when, developers have access to players and players have access to developers, depending on like, that has to be clamped, of course. Like, it can't be just, abuse on either side. And that's kind of like a critique I have of the industry, is we do not clamp that enough. Companies, I think, recently are a little bit more like, okay, we are not going to have the toxicity in this situation. And it does really affect things. At Riot, like, they had I'm sure they do have an entire department of player behavior, which studied toxicity habits. They found out that toxic players are bad in the game. They're not contributing meaningful. They're not even like paying customers necessarily, which is, I think, always a funny thing that I always hear. I was like, well, we're not paying for this game. Like, okay, like the drop in the bucket, like you're not buying Sony's recent title, and you're not going to buy the Naughty Dog title. Oh, I'm cry. It's like, a billion other people are going to buy that, right?
And then we saw that come true with the whole Odyssey thing. I mean,
yes,
I'll just put it
Greatest
this way.
example right now.
I was gonna go see it this morning, a matinee, and it was like first of all I was gonna go see it with a friend. We were gonna go see it this afternoon. It's like, oh my god, it's like it's still sold out. So I went and I looked at the early showing of the day. It was like at 9:30 in the morning, and that one was sold out. The IMAX. It's like it's the Monday after release, and it's already taken in $260 million or something like that. So nobody cares about these like Twitter grievances at all.
Also,
side note, really quick, the one of the funniest things is, of course, Elon Musk was one of the biggest boosters of this wokeness in the Odyssey film narrative, which absolutely true. Elliot Page, phenomenal performance. One of the greatest characters. Only gets like 6 minutes in the movie. Phenomenally important, wonderful character, great performance. But I will say it was really funny when the Twitter account Synesthetic or something like that posted the weekend opening for the Odyssey, and Elon Musk unfollowed the account. Like that was really good. Really good stuff. Taking the L, which these are just like petty grievances that no one actually cares about. Is like employing a trans guy or anything like that. Yeah.
I mean, and it's also funny because I just watched. I'm not a big Marvel head. Respect the arts and the craft, but I saw the Avengers Doomsday trailer came out today, and I try to look at despite not being a Marvel fanboy or Star Wars fanboy, that you can see Transformers behind me. Something that I do really enjoy is like there are millions and millions of people that love the Marvel franchises that are really salivating at another chapter of this. Those are teams that intentionally function off of diversity, equity, inclusion, right? They pull in diverse cast members, diverse writers, people from all over in this gigantic melting pot. And it's some of the most beloved franchises ever, despite what some like reactionary movements or folks might attest to otherwise. Massively successful, and you're really, by like removing voting with your wallet and not seeing these things, not seeing the Odyssey, it's like you can't really affect the culture that way. I know you guys have said the term politics is a downstream of culture, and no one's going to win back culture by not seeing the Odyssey movie, I guess.
Yeah. I also just kind of like I really want those guys like Elon to just make your own. You're the richest man in the world. He apparently founded XA, and I had to Google it while you were talking just to see if we'd had any updates. Towards the end of last year, he promised that he would ship an entirely AI-made game by the end of 2026, and clock is ticking, and we haven't heard anything since. So we'll be interested to see if he releases anything or what the updates are on that.
Yeah, I think, and that's another funny thing to be privy to as well, is there's this one account on Twitter a while ago that created a video. It was sort of like a hex. I don't know if you remember the game Hexen, built on the Doom engine, very pixelated. Obviously, it was very medieval and demonic and stuff. And it posted, a first-person camera glove and a sword, and it's like walking towards this castle in the distance. And it was an AI-generated,
the castle
movie.
Looked like I was on mushrooms.
It's like
I
weeping
do remember that.
And someone was like, make a game like this. I'm like, this game already exists, first of all. Second of all, you literally can't do this. Like, it was interesting because there was a few folks, developers, who were like, you literally can't do this, homie. It doesn't work this way. Others that were like, well, you can do this, and this is how you might find a workaround. It's how you could emulate it. You'll never have the exact thing, though, because it is just a 2D image with nothing in an engine environment to actually interact with. Like, are you going to essentially like burn down a rainforest to render every single image of this in a 2D framework? That is impossible. Like, kind of like literally impossible. I'll get challenged on that, I'm sure. But it's not optimal. First of all, it would take so many resources. It's not contiguous. It's not really interactive. And so it makes me chuckle quite a bit when someone says something along the lines of, game developers are done with, or Sony is shuddering or shaking in their boots or something. It's like, this is literally not a game. That goes back to the point of like, the industry being opaque, or people looking at the industry being sort of like willfully ignorant of it, thinking that the jingling keys can recreate some of their like favorite gaming experiences, right? It shows just how big the disconnect is. So it's a tough fight to fight, but it's sort of why I haven't become as doomer as about AI as I think some folks have, and there are good reasons to be, but it doesn't strike me to my core as much as I thought it would.
What about like gamers' access to the gaming industry? Because consoles in particular are becoming a lot more expensive really rapidly.
Yeah, speaking of pre-ordering GTA 6, Jesus Christ, I don't have a next-gen console. I was looking at it. $800 to $1,000 for a PlayStation, dude.
Okay, they are expensive, and Steam machines fucking expensive. It's really hard price wise to like access game consoles these days. I'm so happy I bought my PC I'm currently on right now when I did, like 4 years ago, right before the AI bubble boom, whatever you want to call it, like the boom of AI as an industry, and like the bubble that it's become. Because it was not that expensive of a PC, but it definitely would be these days. Yeah, there's a huge, I'm not sure how it resolves either, because I think that goes back to like, one of the pillars like GTA falling and causing like a catalyzing effect. But it's like, I see almost like home prices too. It's like, at what point do people just stop having homes, versus like, if you can't have access to the vast majority of games out there through like.
So you're saying we need to bring back Blockbuster?
Yes, actually, unironically, absolutely. Because my entire life was built around renting games from Blockbuster and our local grocery store, Wegmans, which was even more affordable.
I think I was one of the last customers at my city's Family Video. Because Blockbuster was, of course, way shuttered at that point. But I was frequenting Family Video for movies and video games every once in a while. Yeah.
I mean, I think that kind of does translate to like, I think, again, that kernel of renting a game, enjoying it, not having to, like, I know so many folks who were not of means growing up, and that was how they got, the love of the games they got. It was like, you could have this for a weekend to bring your friends over, and that was awesome. And then it goes back and you don't have to pay the $60 because that was a lot or more. But I think like that kernel of like golden, really like beauty when the games industry kind of started, again, got subverted and sort of perverted into the idea of like, wait, what if you're renting every single day of every piece of content?
Right.
And something that was really kind of like meaningful for probably a lot of us became super insidious and toxic.
Yeah.
So and actually I feel like you bring up something interesting, because I feel like with the expensive nature of a lot of media right now is we're sort of in this new era of not really owning anything, but it's not renting. It's subscription based services to platforms like Hulu or Netflix or like whatever it might be, whatever like a piece Game of Pass. Media you might be. Game Pass. Everything is sort of people are owning less and less across all media, whether it be music, TV, video games, and I feel like that's absolutely a move that's going to continue to happen, especially with the rising prices. There was a story that came out recently of AI companies. I think this is just in one neighborhood or one suburb somewhere. I think it was like maybe Arizona, maybe. I don't have it in front of me, but they are paying homeowners to put like little mini data, like
oh my God,
PCs on their property to like run for them. And I mean, I could absolutely see a future, and people have been talking this for a minute, where people are not really going to even own PCs eventually, when everything sort of gets a little too expensive and companies are going to be selling access to like PC. Is there any like talk about that, or even acknowledgement, or even am I talking out of my ass? Is that like a reality?
I don't think so. I think you actually saw a preview that with companies that did try to get into remote streaming game systems. I think Stadia, Google Stadia, and a few other of the precursors.
I forgot about Stadia,
which in a weird way I think are sort of ahead of their time. I'm not saying necessarily good. I mean, but it kind of goes back to that original idea, which is like, what if there was a good version of this where you paid like maybe a small amount and were able to access games like I have a computer built to fight God to play Cyberpunk 2077 on it. Not everyone's going to have that.
Right.
But having games that are really meaningful to people, how about giving folks like a line to that? But again, it gets like twisted into this like hyper predatory system that ends up eating people's environments as it goes. So I don't know if there's so much. I don't know. Like, you bring up an interesting question that now I'm like, I gotta ask someone about that, like what the outlook on that might be, because I think the industry does sort of focus for a long time. It did. I'm like, microtransactions will last forever. COVID level audiences will last forever. AI something will last forever, and obviously that's the biggest indication that nothing will last forever. So I'm not even sure like what high console prices lasting forever will mean. I think there probably is some sort of reckoning down the pipe from multiple different vectors. I wish I had a better answer to that.
No worries. It's like, I feel like a very new concept or idea that like is probably closer to reality than not. No, I feel like no one really truly knows, because it's sort of like a thing that, I mean, it's not happening quite yet, but it absolutely could.
Yeah. Well, the whole like push against physical media, I know the PlayStation is under fire for that right now, is pretty insidious. And that's the one, I guess, one area where I guess we could have a common cause with the capital G gamers, right?
Yes.
Because we can all kind of agree we're physical media enjoyers.
I put the G in parentheses and aimers. Yeah. Sorry.
It's not looking good. I mean, the Stadia stuff, that failed because it was like latency and then just cost, right?
I think so.
I don't know if or when that ever becomes possible, but I just think that with everything else being super consolidated to the point where, when I want to come back to this in a minute, by the way, this consolidation has resulted in a lot of like really sought after titles being canceled.
Yes.
Even. Yep. It's just not having any sort of, the way that, I guess what I'm saying is the way that the industry is sort of going is it's not going to have a good ending if we can't have physical copies of the games that do exist, let alone letting them handle, properties that aren't even getting shipped at this point. And on that note, I wondered if you had really any thoughts if the consolidation of all this, like you were saying before, ties into some of those. Because I know there was that the first announcement, the one that I was really looking for was Rare's, I think it was Everwild. Did you guys, either of you guys hear about that? I was really looking forward to that. There's a bunch of the Perfect Dark game got canceled. There's a bunch of ones that were really like, and I think this is, maybe I'm wrong. And if I am wrong, beat my ass in the comments, but I'll ask you guys too. That seems to be kind of tied into this sort of consolidation of capital into these studios.
Yeah, I think you get, I think in virtually all their media, you also get this kind of like sequelitis component, or you get the aspect of like, you just farm IPs until they're dead. But the sign of the times that makes it even more scary is that trusted IPs still kind of die on the vine. I think, I don't remember who, Marvel in general, but I don't remember what studio was working on it. A few Marvel properties were pulled that got shuttered, and it's like, really? If again, it's like a shock. It's like, if the franchises, it's like, it's Marvel. Like, some of these games are struggling, even that do have heavy IPs and properties behind them. And I'm not really sure. I think the consolidation is, again, you're trying to, like, industry is trying to find every little bit of room in your brain to try to extract value from that. And in this case, I think they might be running dry. And I think in many cases, they're actually then backing off of certain IPs that may not be higher. This is a little bit more speculation, but I'm sort of thinking that, like, okay, if you make a Marvel game and that is even potentially unstable, this property from like maybe 20 years ago, we want to make a reboot over, or they're then make a new fresh version, like that is actually off the table, possibly. I don't know, like, where the logical end to that lies.
I think that unfortunately it just continues to consolidate. My nihilistic, awful projection is, why make a Spider-Man game when you can just license the Spider-Man IP to Fortnite and he can exist in the Fortnite metaverse or whatever? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think there's something. I mean, I think there is something there in terms of, like, I haven't keeping too high tabs on it, but you did see these sort of like convergence systems where the line between certain games was blurred between like the massive entertainment product they were, and Fortnite is a good example of that. where it's like, oh, it's not just like click heads and explode the other human. It's an entire concerts you go to. I have friends that are playing Pal World with their kids. I have almost Roblox is essentially a development platform in and of itself. And so
the
you
child slave developer factory.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, it's horrifying.
Yeah.
And go ahead. Sorry.
No, you finish your thought.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, so there's this weird, like, everything kind of gels together into these mass amoebas of consolidation, and you kind of don't know where it's going next, and if there's even a product or a strategy behind it. It's really interesting because it is going back to the original, like, these components are failing, like microtransactions aren't paying off as much, audiences don't have as much money as they used to, the big games maybe are going to be met with more tepid reactions. So it's like the entire system is extremely unstable.
Thank you for bringing up Fortnite. I think we've talked a little bit about Fortnite on this show previously, but something that I was talking to someone about before, and I read a really interesting, it wasn't like a news media piece, but I think it was just like some Substack about what Fortnite represents to like younger gamers and stuff like Minecraft these days compared to like when we were growing up in gaming. Is gaming for young people these days is sort of a totally different experience. It's less, and this is sort of due partially to the live service aspect of it, but I feel like it seems like a lot of younger people these days use video games as a lobby to hang out with their friends, which has always sort of been the case. You would always play video games with friends, of course, but especially the way Roblox works, it's a zone that you hang out with your friend. It doesn't really matter what you play in in Roblox. It's just it is used as a platform to chat with your friends.
Yeah,
and the relationship to video games that young people today have to video games itself, the video game industry and different titles, to like when we were young, is a totally different experience. And I think that absolutely changes the industry as a whole too. Is it incentivizes different things. It incentivizes different sorts of structures within video games to be made, and maybe less single player or whatever RPG type video games to be prioritized.
Yeah, I think
but I don't know if I have a broader point other than that, like just that the people, like younger people these days, have a way different relationship with video games.
I agree. And in fact, like I hesitate to be like, oh, there's a bright spot there. I was working on a project that initially started as a Roblox game, a very popular Roblox game. The developers were entirely working inside of the engine, and I didn't even realize at that point that it was essentially a release publication platform. And then their goal was to take that outside and sort of create their own platform or make it a game standalone. So that was really new to me. And starting to understand the Minecraft ecosystem, the Roblox ecosystem, the Fortnite ecosystem beyond just the gameplay component gave me a little bit of hope. I don't know how, I don't know if it still remains with me. Everything has been so atrophied at this point, though I try to remain positive. Like I try to stay on the side of like, for every negative, you can see a little bit of light shining through. I guess that's how I've survived. But I think due to that, like when we were, I'm an elder Zennial or whatever. So I started with just playing Nintendo and Sega with my friends. June, I know you were into fighting games, correct?
Still am. Don't get out into events as much as I would like or have in the past, but absolutely
but I am. Smash Melee, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Project M.
Oh, I loved Project M. High school, that was huge for me in high school.
I worked on a project that was the folks from Project M to make a standalone Smash clone, essentially called Icons, from a company called Wave Dash.
I remember Icons and Wave Dash. It didn't really take off, if I remember.
It did not, unfortunately, because of microtransactions and because of other philosophies. But and then going into online environments like WoW or whatever, it's like again, the through line is like community, right? The through line is like having human social connections first in the living room, then online, and then elevating into these like massive social spaces. And to me, that is the sort of genius and the lovely intent behind game development and the mentality behind developers, especially. And so I think like when I look at this wider world of user generated content, this wider world of folks being able to make their own games in these ecosystems or enjoy like a wider experience. Like on the first pass, like I like that. I know there's a cynical component to it, but I always try to remind folks that are a little, a little downed by the industry. It's also like it's never been easier to make a game.
I want to hop in here too, just to say, if we're talking about bright spots, there's something about sort of like existing in the shadow of this Leviathan that spurs just such wonderful, genuine creativity. I follow a couple of accounts on Instagram and stuff that are literally just exist to like showcase like indie games that are coming or whatever. And I can't tell you, once or twice a week, I'm like, holy shit, what a cool idea for a game. There's so much good stuff out there, so much good stuff coming. It's just not coming from these, it's not coming from a company that Jared Kushner owns. You know what I mean? Right. Unfortunately, Madden is going to be bad, but Madden has always been bad. I buy it every year because I'm a fucking sucker, but it's not going to get better.
I remember you talking about that.
And I think that is like actually absolutely the flip side here is that, I believe truly that, and I could be wrong, of course, but we're sort of coming to the end of the AAA age, and we've sort of coming up for a long time. There's so many amazing indie games. It is that, and that's not even just the case with the video game industry. Everything is sort of indie or independently owned, or just one guy with with an idea. Sort of. That's really the biggest success stories of, in particular, the gaming industry in the last 10 years.
Yeah, you get Hades, right? When you have that sort of...
I love Hades,
I mean, their art is Gen Z, who's the art director, I believe, incredible. Like, and that's, it kind of goes back to like, there is this dissonance and large gap between indie development and AAA. But you're right. It's like, I talk about this sometimes in the sense of character design and some other artistic approaches, which is, most good things that you love are 70% novelty and 70% familiarity and 30% novelty. Or it's built on sort of like archetypical experiences that then have enough of a twist in them that makes you feel like you're looking at something new. And it's one of the reasons like AI is essentially, I think, destined to not resonate in this because it cannot innovate or have cognition like human developers can. So, you have, sure, the market and the industry is flooded, but you do have the opportunity to tell some really amazing stories. Like I started I just draw pictures for a living, and I'm incredibly blessed to do so. But now I can like get into Unreal with a really crummy model I made in Blender and tell a story I really wanted to tell. I have, and because I'm connected with all of these other industry folks, we can explore things that probably wouldn't be the most recognized by AAA. Like I'm making a sort of cyberpunk inspired story about the Midwest, how you can't go home because of the decisions you've made. And it's very much about like telling the story of my little podunk town, Buffalo, New York, in a slightly different setting, but in a post-industrialized, climate change awry environment.
Smoke everywhere.
Smoke, yeah, exactly. Data centers everywhere. But I don't know who would want to be interested in that. But at this time in this time and space, like those tools are open to everybody. Like Epic and Unreal is not going to charge you for like a student level. They're not going to charge you until you make money, and it can be debated about like how much they're going to take. But you can get into so many tools this like right now and make a difference, even if you're just going to create something your own that never gets shown, a piece of fan art, or doing something in Blender, like picking up the stylus or the pencil or the mouse or whatever. Yeah. You never know what could gain support. You never know what could gain like a snowball effect. One of my favorite games of all time is Star Control 2. Which was, do you know what it is?
I'm familiar.
Okay. Yeah. Which is low key one of the most inspirational and influential games of like all time, apparently. Like when I had a friend at Riot who was like creative director, I think, on Mass Effect 2, and I was like, come on, how much of Star Control influenced this? She's like, yeah, a lot of it. And the guys who initially created Star Control, which is now a different title, it's Urquan Masters. They own the rights to the game, but not the name. They released it open source, and now they like raised almost $1 million for a sequel. And that's incredible. It's like such a triumph of stick-to-itiveness and will, and shows that like people are really hungry for meaningful experiences. And it's I'm not going to say it's the most simple thing to do. I'm not going to be like learn to code. That I can't code. I can't do that. But I can say like just start with a pencil. Push a polygon, make a cube in Blender, and you never know like how that cube is going to evolve into a character that like touches millions of people. It's like going back to like one of the original themes is a lot of the people that started the games industry proper were players. We're a diverse amount of players, folks that came from all walks, classes, backgrounds, and they managed to get their visions somewhere that still influence franchises to this day and age. And I think there is a really like amazing and inspirational through line through game development, which is I think a lot of why those of us who even go through the layoffs and go through the struggles and the executives and the bad scope and some of the difficult production times, we always kind of keep going back. We always kind of have this hopeful mentality that we'll find a new home and just meet the people again. It's one of the reasons why, despite the layoffs and all of that, I don't want to generalize because I know a lot of people do struggle, but a lot of folks I know do get job very soon after. Again, not everyone. A lot of people struggle. Depends on discipline you're in, but it is one of the little bright spots that you do have a community you can fall back on. And if you're a stand-up person and a kind person and not a sociopath, there is a family there for you.
So Grums might have a harder time getting back into the industry.
He just never existed. That's what I'm going to say. He's like an invention by like he's a simulacrum or something. I'm thinking he's a hologram. Like I think he's like just a bunch of talking points run through someone in their basement.
I can see him being entirely run through Claude at this point.
I think my favorite thing about him, by the way, is he's been going on and on. It wouldn't surprise anybody, but if you look at his timeline about how like AI, we just need to accept that AI in game dev is like inevitable because it's so groundbreaking. It's like, all right, Mark, well, where the fuck is Ember? Where's Ember? If this shit is so good, where's your game? Because we just crossed the 10-year anniversary. You know what I mean? Of him launching.
I have to reset the clock, folks.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, you've got all the stuff, and it's so revolutionary. Nothing, not the new demo even that he was talking about. He also missed the deadline for that. Whoops. So I guess it can't be that great.
You supposedly have the tools. And that is kind of another thing that always does kind of make me chuckle. And it gives me some bright spot to some of this, which is, I teach a class and some students are real nervous about the future, especially in 2D art, especially in concept art, illustration. And they will ask me like, what impact has AI had? And again, this is more anecdotal. This is less of like a wider view of the industry. And I don't know how it necessarily applies across certain disciplines, but whenever I see it, there's a bird behind me that's having a moment. Sorry, 1 second. I heard a squeak.
No worries.
When I see it utilized, we had at one job, we had sort of a week, like it was a jam. It was an AI game jam. And, we all wanted to put a gun to our heads. But we sort of took a moment like, okay, we'll give these tools, quote unquote, some whatever, we'll give it some attention and see what we can do that maybe it would help our process. So I kind of took on this thing where I was like, okay, I design characters. Can it interpret? Normally I have to do like a front, a side, a back, orthographic views, turnarounds, they're usually called, of a character. So I can hand it to a 3D modeler and be like, go with God, create this thing. I was like, can it do this for me? Can it create those views out of my front view and see what happens? And at first glance, you're like, wow, fantastic. It did these views and created some breakouts. Amazing. And then you zoom in, you're like, oh no, this is out of line. Oh no, this has tweaked in some gobbledygook way. Oh my God, I had to spend 30 minutes to an hour attempting to strong arm this thing to give me some sort of innovative solution. And in that time, I could have just done it myself.
Right.
And so, I've seen some executives or senior leadership maybe throw a piece of AI art down the pipe as inspiration, but then there's a team of like 5 concept artists or something on a project that are still designing the character or redoing it or making the environment work. a big, and I think this goes back to like how the AI boosters and those who really are not even like in the industry, like a Kern or whoever, doesn't really understand like where the rubber meets the road there, that there is an interpretation process between ideation and visual development and all this blue sky stuff to actual implementation. And at least currently, there is no smooth transition there that AI can provide. Like, it still messes up your models. It still screws up your animations. It messes your 2D images up. And I've been being told for like 5 to 6 years that this is only the beginning, and I still struggle with it. The only times I've had some sort of meaningful result is when I smash my own work together in like a blend option. And then I can like, oh, cool, it made me a new pauldron on this character, or maybe it gave me like something kind of new. But again, going back to like the familiarity and the novelty, humans work based on innovation, being able to have like those light bulb moments that are surprising to everyone.
I would also say within technological limitation is one of the biggest breeders for art. And if you say you can snap your finger and get anything, there is no innovation.
Yes, absolutely. Like those limitations, and is of course, and this is kind of a critique I think a lot of artists and developers have, is the chase towards the real, towards the hyper real, towards the, the AAA kind of mentality, is that you're removed of some of those limitations, if that makes sense, because the tools have to sort of like expand to fill all of those little gaps. And Unreal, the engine, now you can like import some crazy high resolution model and boom, it's in. I don't know if that's a good thing, to tell you the truth.
I mean,
because that trickles down into like heavy, expensive consoles and crazy requirements. That, do you need those?
There's also just, I would say, the argument of like, to be clear, I love Red Dead 2, one of my favorite games of all time. I love it. I don't know how many hours I have into it. And people always will use that as an example of like this hyper realistic, hyper detailed, whatever. It's like, does every game need, and this is a true thing that I found out, when it rains, the testicles on the horse shrink.
Yeah. Okay.
Not every game needs
so
that.
many stories.
That's kind of a fun little Easter egg, I guess. But like, we don't need to, not every game needs to have that,
Yeah. So, and I this is, God, there's so many, oh my God, go on forever about this sort of stuff, because this is like my wheelhouse. Again, it goes back, like, I'm a stylized person. Like I'm an old school Disney fan. Like, it really is like, I grew up on like The Little Mermaid and, Beauty and the Beast and all of this like seminal 80s golden era animation. And 2D animation is about as pure as you can get to one of like the original entertainment art forms that sort of was a precursor to games and a lot of other animation. Filters all its way up into like traditional animation to like Toy Story to whatever. And something that we in this sort of like stylized wheelhouse, we always talk about is that the reason a Toy Story still holds up, I saw the most recent Toy Story 5 and like cried as more than I wanted to as someone who's 46. And you can still look back at the original Toy Story and find those incredibly emotionally motivating themes and executions. The reason that holds up is because it's handcrafted. And humans will always recognize when something has a human imprint on it, which is why we struggle with hyper real, uncanny valley, and things that just don't really, it makes our brain go, what? Our brain likes symmetry, but it doesn't like that much symmetry. Our brain likes texture, but it doesn't necessarily want to see the skin pores. Games that are stylized, like League of Legends is like this, Overwatch is like this, a lot of these stylized games that kind of break things down to a minimum of their execution, of like where you can see you always want to see the painter's touch, right? You always want to see the brush stroke, is how we described it at Riot when we're focusing on that, that sort of style and illustration. That's what makes art resonant to us. It's why we kind of freak out and like don't know what our brain is doing when you see something that feels unsettling that way. So the same applies with games as well, where it's like, I'm very like, the pursuit of the real is very an antithetical viewpoint that I have. Not only because of like, well, it's not what I want to see. Like, I don't want to see every strand of hair. I don't care. Also, it's like, man, that's a lot of work. And what if a game I would prefer to again, like work in those limitations that create the innovation.
Well,
and
there's also
create
something to be said about leaving some of this up to the imagination of the
That's
player.
exactly
I
it,
mean,
yes.
that if you can get people thinking about the possibility, or like, I still think about, it's very funny. I'm close to your age. I'm a little younger, but like I think about the Super Nintendo Link to the Past, and I think about like, oh my God, that game was everything to me, and the way that I view it in my head versus what it looks like now. But it's because the technical limitations of that, you had to kind of think about it, and it gets you as a little kid daydreaming about that entire universe in a way that, like the Zelda live action movie probably won't to kids this generation or whatever.
Well, you say the keywords, leave it up to the imagination. And so there's a good example of this in art in general, which is Impressionism, right? I come from a fine art background-ish. I went to an East Coast school that made me think weird. And we very woke. Yeah, very woke. It did, actually. And taught me some interesting stuff, which was like, you can have execution, but if there's no idea, it sucks, right? And Impressionism is one of those beautiful moments in art history where you were not being explained everything that was going on. You were not being told this is how exactly the light is falling on this candlestick or on this person's skin. And as artists came along, they were like, the conceptual is going to trump the technical. And that gave us this huge emotional reaction, right? Like we entered from a phase that was like highly realistic, where we're painting like nobles in this hyper realistic style. And you're like, all right, these are like vanity projects. All of a sudden it switches over in like the mid to late 1800s into expressionist movements, into Fauvism, into Cubism, into Impressionism. And these were like, the Paris salons. And there was a good reason behind it, because it's kind of one of the first emergence, at least in like the more Westernish tradition, the first emergence of something that was, and of course it was sourced from vast global influences that is often not given enough credit to. But these sort of like very emotional things were tapped into and then put forward. And it created an emotional reaction to where art was largely about patronage, at the time, and largely was seen as sort of a lens that you viewed nobility through. It was like from the church, it was from the nobles, it was from an elevated class. And all of a sudden here come these rabble rousers using their color, and like, oh my God, what is up with this? And
I mean,
talk about an inflection point.
Fascinating compared to today, though, where you mentioned realism and expressionism, where right now with AI generated art in particular, we're sort of at this hyper realistic moment where generative AI can create hyper realistic, like more realistic than artists would care to ever create intentionally before. And it's so uncanny and it's so weird. And we're sort of coming up against this moment where artists, I think in response, are starting to get maybe a little bit more weird, a little bit more expressive. I think that is like a fascinating historical comparison.
It's also, I mean, I don't know internally how it's managed at some companies, but speaking about especially the kind of like almost like backlash towards the experimental and impressionistic,
right?
There's a lot of influence in games going back to that as well, right? Where it's like, I played a game. Oh my God, what was it called? It was a side scroller. It was all about depression. It was super salient. But a beautiful side scroller had like a few different mechanics of the character running from the side. She had like a little red cloak. I think it was by a French studio. And if you're going to tell me an abstract, almost like stick figure portrayal of your inner spirit walking through the depression environment, reconstructing the statues that form their archetypical self or something was going to be a game I'd cry over. I'd be like, I would think I would be nuts. But it's like in the absence and intense focus of hyper realism of AI, there goes a bird, of AI, of like intense rendering, you do get this thread of hyper emotional experiences that are impressionistic, that do leave things to the imagination, that are allowing for us to interpret versus being it spelled out to. And in some games, like, you might need the horse testicles moving, in some games.
I know I
right?
do. I need that. I need that in every game.
In a game where you're like
balls.
shooting the Pinkertons, maybe you want that much like, intensity. But in a game where like maybe you're having a little bit more of an emotional experience that is a little more abstract, that's where like the language of real art will shine. And I think we, as developers, when we're kind of moved over into a more hyper realistic experience, we tend to get maybe a little resentful. I am not, by the way, knocking hyper real in its craft. Geniuses make that stuff happen. It is wizardry. You have single people sometimes that are responsible for how graphics engines work on a project. Sorcery, absolute sorcery. So I don't want to necessarily knock the quality or the pursuit of that from a technical aspect. I think it just can sometimes constrain us as artists potentially. But moving into, but having the limitations create the need for more emotion to be present, perhaps, is one of the places you do see that innovation and that real like artistic, core of humans come in and reignite. So I think there almost is a multi-angled, like reactionary in a good way movement about AI, and even it's trickling into consumers where it's like, I was on like the Corvette subreddit or something, and like sometimes you get these people who are like, look at the cool version I did in Midjourney of like a Corvette that's based on, the old one. People are like, AI slop, this is bullshit. I'm like, wow, if it's reached like, the New Balance, like sock it to your knees, like Corvette guys, and yeah, it's probably like
It's over.
kind of at a pit. Yeah, maybe it is washed. And that's why it's like there's a little bit of those times where it's like, yeah, like the pushback actually can work. Just FYI, like the is this a 3D model account on
Love it.
like
Yeah.
that person has led like the charge civilizationally from this standpoint. Like that's mind-blowing to me and amazing. And it's why like when you have this sort of it bugs me to no end that like gamers and developers are not like heavily solidarity wise in step, because they want the exact same thing. And it's like every other reactionary movement where you're like, guys, your real issue here is like the framework of capital. And it's, you are in lockstep with a developer who wants to make an amazing piece of art that resonates with you, that they want to play. And often it's other factors that are not under their control that get them, that create a subpar product or create something that's half baked or whatever. It's a shame. And I guess it's kind of like one of the reasons why, like, I do enjoy scuffling it up with some of the gamer gators and stuff, because I'm like, bro, you have no idea how this works. Like, it's like the line that Rutger Hauer gives at the end of Blade Runner was like, I have seen things you people wouldn't believe. And it's like, in good ways and bad ways, where it can be a magical thing, game development. It can be a magical thing playing games, and that really should unite people who are playing the games, but also like really do feel crummy when an AI product is released in the vein of their favorite IP, or when something is subpar because it got early release because because Microsoft decided to pull funding or do whatever. There's so many things that unite us, the gamers and the developers and the enjoyers alike. And I think like the AI thing is part of it that actually has like very much catalyzed. There is a pushback to it inside of the industry, and I feel I don't want to invalidate anyone who's gone through these like significant struggles if positions have been eliminated, but it feels sometimes like the AI stuff is starting to be pushed towards the sidelines. Yeah. And it's the way that I look at that push as sort of being like one of vapor and one of astroturfing, where it's like no one wants this. Like your brain does not want everything rendered, just like you don't like it when it's hyper real, and that's increased your budget and increased the timeline for a game to come out. They also don't like it when it's a picture, of their favorite character that someone made, through Midjourney or something. Like it hits the same, like fundamental human, core brain that we sort of like vomit at. So it's like, it's unnatural and it must die. The Butlerian jihad shall begin, and it shall begin in games.
Well, I think that is a fantastic place to leave you thinking about the end of this episode. Michael, have you got anything to plug?
I don't have a ton to plug. Some projects I'm really excited about. It's more just like maybe speaking to the youths out there a little bit, where I teach a class. I teach a class actually at the Brainstorm Academy. Maybe that's something to plug. I try to help students from a really fundamental way of drawing. Like, it's just like how the building blocks, how to become an artist, essentially, like real fundamentals, perspective, form, creation. If you would like to have an interaction with me and learn some things, take a look at Brainstorm Academy. It's super fun. I love doing it. I love talking to students. I love community outreach. I love helping people learn about art. I don't have a super active like Instagram. I'm really not on Twitter anymore. If you want to follow me at Iron_Stylus on Instagram, you'll get some parrot pictures and
They're
some cringe.
Parrots.
What'd you say?
They're good parrots.
They are good birds. They're very good birds.
I'm thinking, Caleb, you need to get some birds in the background.
Yeah.
This is really pleasant.
Yeah.
Everyone in this chat
would
respects
like
birds.
that, unfortunately, but someday,
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Michael. And we'll
Of
make
course,
sure that
thank
we get your links in here.
Of
As
course.
for us, we have a couple things to plug. Let's start with a game jam, because we did talk about this a little bit on the last episode. It's official. I wanted to make sure that B was good with it before I was like, hey, we're going to, because, B does our community stuff. I didn't want to just be like, I have this idea. Now you have a bunch of extra shit to do. I wanted to make sure that she was cool with it first. So we are going to do the first ever, and stay tuned for details because we're still working this out. The first ever Kill the Computer game jam is coming. It'll probably be a fall thing, I think. But we're going to start organizing it this summer. If you are interested in that, we're going to do it solo or teams, so we can pair you up with people. Again, still very early in the process. If you want to keep in touch on that, hit us up on our Reddit, r/killthecomputer, or our Discord, discord.gg/killthecomputer, and hang out in there until details come out. But I'm really, really fucking excited about that. So we need artists, we need musicians, we need programmers, we need everybody. So if you want to, if you're a musician or anybody, hop on in and we'll get you paired up with people for the team stuff. Next up, we have our mailbag episodes that we've been doing, which, by the way, the reason this episode is even happening is because you guys requested that we start talking about games again a little bit more. So thank you for that. But our mailbag episodes now are free. They're just free on Patreon. So you can sign up for the free tier and you can hear those there for free. And then if you ever do decide to upgrade to one of the paid subscriptions, you'll get our extra stuff with MLYP, with Madison, all the extra bonus stuff that we do over there. And again, eventually someday Marcos and I will be doing our extra show on there and stuff too. So patreon.com/killthecomputer. And also the last thing I've got to plug, two things, sorry. I'm in plug mode today because I always forget. We're doing a short story for Halloween. Submissions are open. We've gotten a couple, but we haven't gotten very many. So the way that it works is you just, you hop in the Discord and it'll be sticking at the top, or you can email us for a link. Everybody who submits a story is entered in for a chance to win a couple bucks. We will have your stories judged and we'll have winners and all that stuff too, but that's just for fun. And last thing is the shop.killthecomputer.com. All the proceeds for that either go to B for helping make our wonderful website, or proceeds for that beyond that will go to the Trans Lifeline charity. So that's what I've got now that I'm done with all my plugs.
Lots of links, lots of things to click on today.
Yeah, June, you got anything now that I'm done yapping?
I think you about covered everything.
Cool.
That's it.
Cool. Michael, thank you a million times over for that.
Thank you.
It was a ton of fun to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, we'll see you next time.
See ya.